welcome to another episode of Life Story with Marty, Australia. I'm Marty here in Melbourne, and I've got a great guest on today, Dublin-born Pete Holidai. Now, Pete's a musician. He's got a lot more, as you'll see, not just musician, everything else, but presenter at 103.2 FM Dublin City. Now, he is one of the formers of the Radiators from Space that were formed in the late 70s. Now, he also they formed back in 2004. He played in Croke Park alongside with U2. And he has so many more stories. So I'm going to let us hear it from Pete's mouth. So just while we cross over to Dublin, if I can play this song, Gloria, which obviously Van Morrison's, which was on the Podge and Rod show on RTE in 2009. So let's pass over. That's the Radiators from Space, and then we will join.
Caroline, are the baby eaters from Nace ready to play their song or what? Huh?
Yes, they're back with their own hyperkinetic version of Van Morrison's Gloria. It's this week's Rock and Recession challengers, the Radiators from Space.
About my baby, you know she comes around about 5 feet 4 from her head to the ground. She come around here just about midnight. She make me feel so good, Lord. She make me feel alright. And her name is G. Walking up my street, coming up to my house, she coming up to my door, she coming up to my room, she made me feel alright, and her name is G-L-O-R.
Van, the moon isn't going to like that, but we don't care.
Sensational. And sadly, that's it from your Monday night Podge and Rod show.
Oh, that's right.
Join us tomorrow night when we'll be meeting hurdy-gurdy fairground attraction Eddie Reader.
Oh, Eddie Reader. She's got to be perfect. Right. You know that song. But if she isn't, well, we'll still give her a lash. That's true, anyway. we will. That's for sure. We'll give her a lash. Yeah.
And we'll be exhuming another Irish quiz classic from the RTE crypt in the prize-laden extravaganza that is the Antiques Game Show.
Nice!
Ooh, see you all then.
See you then! Night, folks!
Pete, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here. It's great to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure for me. And we've just listened to Gloria there, and we've got a couple more songs to play by the end of the show. But what I want to do is I want to give you as much airtime as possible. This is life story. So this is your story. The man behind Pete Holidai. So I'm going to just start off and let you roll it along. Obviously, you know what I'm like. I come in every now and again, but tell us about growing up in Ireland. Plus, also, I must say, I think you got the Irish story and the English story. So I want to start up where you were born and let you flow from there.
Sure, yeah. Okay. Well, I was born in Dublin, in Ireland, obviously, in 1954. Now, I don't really have much memory of those first 4 years I was in Ireland and up till 1958. And I believe what happened then, there was quite an economic decline in Ireland, you know. So my father and mum and we decided then that they were just going to bail out. I remember my dad saying that they had bought a house in Beaumont in Dublin, and they literally just handed the keys in and headed off to London. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm sorry, Pete, what did your parents do? Just a little bit there.
my father was an electrician.
Yep.
And his father before him, my grandfather now works in the Inchicore Works. My mother now was from Dungarvan in County Waterford. And what happened with her is that she ended up being an au pair in London, which was quite common for Irish girls. And what would happen was there'd be one young girl might go to be an au pair in London, and then they'd be, good Irish Catholic girl, etc., so on.
Yeah.
And the employers, the people that employ them, say, "Is there any more like you back home?" And we just send them over. So she ended up. I was caring for my mum for a few years there, where she was, was unfortunately she was beginning to develop, a loss of memory and stuff like that. So I actually lived with her for 2 or 3 years. And I thought it was really, really important to get as much information out of her memory and into mine before she couldn't remember anymore. Do you know what I mean? So it was while it was sad, it was a great opportunity for me, to get all of this, invaluable information. So one of the things she was telling me about then was that she went to London to work as an au pair. Now, this is before she met my father. My father, on the other hand, he had a short stint, believe it or not, just after the war with the RAF in England. Now, I assume he would have been in his teens, or his late teens, and so he went to England and joined the RAF. Now, not as some fighter pilot, but working in the quartermaster stores, and he was caught there, I think, selling silk, the silk that they use for parachutes. He was selling silk on the black market, because it was just after the Second World War. And let's just say he went AWOL, all right? And he legged it back. He legged it back to Ireland, So then he wanted to go back to London. This is again before he met my mother. So in those days, we used to have an ID card, like an ID card. And he said, "Well, I can't go back to London as Ben Smith. I'll be nabbed, by the RAF." So he borrowed his brother's ID card, who was William Smith with a Y, SMYCH, right? Yeah. So he went to London as Willie Smith, and he met my mother, and he told her that he was Willie Smith, just to keep the story straight, etc. And then their first date was at a greyhound racing meeting. I think in I can't remember, one of the famous greyhound tracks in London. I can't remember. That was their first date, and so basically that's where they met, so they came back to Ireland, and my eldest sister Vivian, who's passed away now, and was born in England. And then they came back to Ireland, and myself and my slightly older sister, who was only 10 months older than me, she's passed away as well, unfortunately. We were both born in Ireland, and then we went to London in the 50s. So that's how we ended up in London, really. But as I say, like, they literally just handed the keys in and just said that we're off, So they went to London, and we ended up in the first place we were in London was a couple of rooms above a shop in Lancaster Road, which is quite near Portobello Market,
Yeah.
And I would be only like maybe 4 or 5, etc. So we lived in a couple of rooms above the shop, and across the road were these old houses that were single-family homes that had been transformed into little flats, or tenement buildings. Now, the strange thing is that I think most of those now have been bought up and turned into family homes again, because it's uber expensive, Lancaster Road in West 11. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that was my first memories of London. Then now it would be sitting on the doorstep of Purdy's shop and car spotting. All these cars would go by. Yeah, I was obsessed with cars, right?
Yeah.
And to this day now, if I see a picture of an old car from the 60s, or 50s, I know exactly what it is straight away to this day. So, but then I sort of end up palling up then with a West Indian boy called John Ledger, who lived in one of the flats across the road. So my first friend in London was a little black boy, like a West Indian boy called John Ledger. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I've always thought, looking back on that, I've always thought that was a really good thing. Do you know what I mean? That we were just two kids, and we had no sense of color skins or anything like that. No. We just sort of got on. Do you know what I mean? So we lived in Fulham then. Sorry, we lived in Lancaster Road, I think, for about 3 or 4 years. Do you know what I mean? And the only other thing I can remember about living there was when you came out of the side of the building where above the shop, when you came down into there was a laneway beside it. The main road would be coming across, and there was a laneway, and there was a weighbridge there. Because down the end of the yard is where all the rag and bone men used to come. There used to be like horse and carts in those days, collecting all your old rag and bone men, literally like shouting out, It's like a completely different era. So the rag and bone men used to come in, and there'd be 3 or 4 lads sitting on the cart when they went in and they got weighed. But when they were coming back, the lads were walking, so it was much lighter. They added on the weight of the kids, etc. So this was a rare occurrence. And also, they used to film some of Steptoe and Son.
I was going. Yep.
Yeah, they used to film some of Steptoe and Son around that area as well, and that's all I can really remember initially from living there. And then the family moved to Fulham in Southwest 6, and which I have more vivid memories there because I began to go to school then. Remember I used to go to primary school in a place like it's called St Thomas's in Fulham. And I remember, I'm a catóg, as they say in Irish, which is I'm a left-handed person, or the devil's child, as they say. And I remember, that the nuns in primary school trying to beat it out of me, I would be used to get school dinners in those days, and a nun would come up behind you and whack you on the head with a spoon, and tell you to use the other hand, But it just made me more determined to be left-handed, to be honest, Yeah. And so the years in Fulham, I suppose, were the most, for me, the most important years, because it would have been from maybe, I'm thinking now, it would have been maybe about 7 to 17,
Yep.
And they were critical years where I was going to school. So where we lived in Fulham then, I suppose that the couple of big events that I remember that would have had an influence of where I went, would be, the first one would have been between where we lived in Fulham and the nearest park. It's called the Eelbrook Common. There was an old disused theatre there, and so I remember playing football and dreaming of playing for Chelsea Football Club, etc. And on the way home from playing, in those days, you'd be playing for 5 hours and the scores was like 37-42, and next goal the winner, and then so. As I was walking back from playing football for about 4 or 5 hours, around this old disused theatre, there was what I now know it was an outside broadcast unit, and packed then with girls young, teenagers, etc. So I said, "I'll hang on," and what the hell's going on here, And
Of course you did.
yeah, I said, "Oh yeah, what's this all about?" So the next thing, two big limousines pulled up, and the Beatles got out. All right, I mean the real Beatles,
Eh,
with the round collar, the grey suits with the round collar and the mop top and the whole lot. And I just remember like the policemen, the bobbies in London with their big hats, locking arms and holding the girls back, and the girls are screaming, and they sort of run in through, and next thing they're waving out of a window, and I just looked at all this going on, and I just remember saying, in my sort of new little Cockney Irish accent, "I'll have a bit of that."
Yes.
So that was really important. When I saw this, and I just said, I think I went home and said, "I want a guitar." This is
Well, you've already taken the question. You just answered your own there. I was going to ask you what inspired you, but obviously you just explained that. But please
that was
carry on.
initially it. That was initially it. Yeah, I want a guitar. I want a guitar, and that because certainly in England, during those years, that's what all the teenagers boys end up want to do, like be in a band and buy a guitar, and as opposed to being in a gang and on the streets causing trouble, they just they would want to be in the band and cause trouble. It's just much more fun, if you know what I mean. But nothing really happened seriously, because I was still, I suppose, a bit too young, And then the only other sort of music related event that I can remember being important, which was every Saturday we used to go to the teenage disco. And the teenage disco used to be in a very, very famous place called the Hammersmith Palais.
Yes, I know it well.
Yeah, they used to do a teenage disco there on a Saturday morning. So I mean, we used to go to that. And then in 1966, which of course was the World Cup year, the World Cup was in England. I just remember this particular Saturday, they decided to have a miming competition, So me and my mate, I can't remember who it was now, me and my friend said, "Come on, we'll do it for a laugh." So we went up onto the stage of the Hammersmith Palais, and we mimed to Sonny and Cher, "I've Got You, Babe." Now, I can't remember if I was Sonny or whether it was Cher, but it was the first time I had got up in front of a big audience, and there I was miming. And of course, I think we were so bad that we won it. We won it hands down. We actually won the competition. Or when it came to it was like who gets the biggest cheer wins type of thing. So we won it hands down. The others didn't have a hope because they all took it too seriously. You know what I mean? Where we just went up for the laugh and gave. I realised looking back at it now that we maybe entertained people more than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so we won that, and we ended up then getting our photograph taken, and we were in the Fulham Chronicle newspaper, etc. So between seeing the Beatles and miming on stage to Sonny and Cher at the Hammersmith Palais, that sort of gave me, I suppose, a flavour for what was to come in the not too distant future. Do you know what I mean? So, but then sort of reality kicked in, where when I was 15. I was coming to that critical decision: am I going to leave school and go to work, or leave school and go into further education? And just the way that it was. Remembering now, we spent the entire 1960s in London. Do you know what I mean? Now it was a very, very, I have to say, it was a very, very Irish household within that. And I remember my parents used to bring friends home on a Saturday evening, and there'd be always Irish music in the house, like the Dubliners and the Clancy Brothers and Tommy Makem, etc., and so on. So it was a very, very Irish household, and they used to bring Irish friends home, and that was one of my early gigs as well, where I used to. Now I imagine I was quite dreadful, but I used to be being at the time I was a middle child, and I I was craving attention. I know all this shit now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I used to do imitations, like impersonations, I should say. So I used to be dragged out of bed and entertain the people that came home
You
by
were the
doing
party piece.
I was the party piece, yeah, and that was my first paying gig.
Okay,
I
hold
never
on.
earned
Hold on.
money.
Stop for a second. You're not getting away with this. What impersonations did you do back then?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask for that.
Well,
Well,
sorry.
no, I'm only messing. I think the main one I used to do was there's a couple of comedians called Mike and Bernie Winters that was hugely popular.
Yeah.
And one of them, I think his catchline was "Chuchi face" or something along those lines. And I used to have literally a bowler hat pulled over my head with my ears sticking out, and etc. and so on. I imagine it was terrible, but it certainly entertained people, and it earned me a few bob. So I'm not going to complain after all this stuff. So it's good. I suppose I was a natural entertainer, is what I'm trying to say, really.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, what were you like at school? Were you a comedian or were you
Well, do you know what? Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because in those days when I was at school, if you used to have, I can't remember now which is I can't remember now which is corporal punishment. I think is when they can hit you with a stick.
That's right.
It's not the one where they can. It's not the one where they can hang you. It's the one where they can hit you with a stick.
Yes,
that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So there was one time I got 6 of the best. That's 3 on each hand, right? And what you do I was acting the idiot in class, looking to be the center of attention, right?
Yeah.
And I was sent down to the assembly hall, and you have to wait for the headmaster. Now he was a Scottish fellow,
Yeah.
and he would come right up to you, and more often it was always the same culprits anyway. Do you know what I mean? And he said, "What?" He said, "Smith." He says, "What are you here for?" I said, "Showing off, sir." Right? That was it. I was showing off in class, sir. As I come down, so I got 6 of the best for showing off, but it was worth it, I think. Do you know what I mean? It's actually, it was actually quite. When you realise now, it's actually quite painful. Getting a cane on the palm of your hand, 3 strokes on each hand, and then they expect you to go back to the classroom and actually do stuff but your hands are like that.
Well, I can tell you one thing, Pete. We used to get it from the Christian Brothers after outside the Cora.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
We used to get it on the arse, and then they tell you to sit down. So you couldn't sit down; you'd be going like that.
Yeah, of course you couldn't. No, you'd have to bend the cushion. But I remember my father wouldn't talk about the Christian Brothers that he had now in school. So I never pursued him on it. So I just, if he ever wants to talk about it, he can, But as I was saying, then I got to that age of 15. Do I go on to college or do I go to work? And because it was the 1960s and the economy was booming, I decided then that I was just going to start to go out to work and earn a few bob. So my first job was in a butcher shop there's a famous road in Fulham called the North End Road that has lots of markets and stuff like that. So I worked in the butcher shop, and I lasted 5 weeks. And how I'm not a vegetarian after, I don't know. I lasted 5 weeks, and I ended up then working. I left that job. See, in those days, if you didn't like the job, you just left it and get another one. You got a newspaper called the Evening Standard, and there would be lists of jobs. Lists of one job after the other, and you would ring around. They don't have a telephone number, but as it happened, my sister Jackie, who was 10 months older than me, she was working for a security company. So I ended up then working for a security company for 3 years. Still no real ambitions at the time, no real ambitions to be in the band what I do remember is with I think I saved up my some money over maybe a month and bought myself a guitar. when I started working, and maybe when I got that guitar, it was a right-handed guitar, so and I would try to play it right-handed, but for me, the dexterity is in the left hand. In terms of keeping a rhythm, I can keep a rhythm with the left hand, but I couldn't keep the rhythm with the right hand. So that's why I tried it for a few hours, and I just turned the guitar up the other way around, and then switched the strings around as well, and started playing. And I think from the get-go, from literally within a few hours of getting the guitar and switching it around, I was more interested in writing my own songs than maybe learning other people's songs. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why, but that's just the way I felt. And even to this day, I would struggle to play a cover version at a party. Do you know what I mean? I've sort of learned to play a couple to have just in case, But I was always much more interested in writing my own songs, and in those days you had no real way of recording though, unless you could afford a tape recorder, etc. So I worked for about 3 years, and then what happened was in the early 70s, I think. Now my father, when he was in London, when he was in London, him and his younger brother started up a business as building contractors. And then because the economy was really, really booming, my dad was fairly much, it's pity more of it didn't rub off on me, but he was very much an entrepreneur of his time, where he had the following businesses. He had Smith Brothers building contractors. He had an estate agency, because the property was beginning to boom. So he basically took over an office, created an estate agency, and then employed people that knew how that business worked. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't buying or selling houses, but he got people in who knew how to buy and sell houses. And then, but he also, and the one I remember was he had the Harp Employment Agency, and this was the Harp Employment Agency, and this was really focused on, he knew that there were lots of people coming over from Ireland to England, so he basically acted as a go-between between a workforce coming in from Ireland and potential employers, which was genius, I thought. When I look back on it now.
He was a real, you used the word say, but very entrepreneurial. And as you say, that probably goes back to your grandfather and that electrician, and that as we have the contact there, you guys worked, and yourself worked on the Curragh camp where I was born.
Yeah.
But it shows the stuff he's done. I want to move on a bit because this is very important. Your music.
Yeah.
Right.
But when the family
when
moved
did
back,
things change?
All right. Well, things changed initially because what happened was around 71, 72, I think you had a big, huge change. Like it was like the bubble had burst, and you had the oil crisis in the early 70s, etc., and so on. So I think my dad ended up then having, the tax man might have been chasing him a bit, So, and where we lived in Fulham, it was the two houses at the end of a terrace street had a basement and a garden. All the others just had you go in on the ground floor and the first floor. So the house that we bought, we ended up buying a house, I should have said, that had a basement, a ground floor, and a first floor. Now the house beside ours sold the year before for £9,000, and my dad ended up selling the house that, including a sitting tenant at the time, he ended up selling it a year later for £16,000, which was a huge amount of money in those days. So he was able to come back to Dublin and buy a 4-bedroom detached house with the garage for 4. Do you know what I mean? And then start up his business again. So I came back obviously with the family, and for me it was a huge culture shock. going back to Ireland after spending the entire 1960s in London, you know, and it was like genuinely for me, it was like going back in time. It was like going back to the 1950s or something. Do you know what I mean? And it was like the priest, the guard, the politician, and whatever you have in yourself, you know. And I couldn't handle it at all. However, I did meet a fellow called Steve Averill, who became also became he in later years, Steve Averill, as he might call him, he gained fame for designing all of U2's album covers. You know, so he's a quite renowned graphic designer. But Steve was trying to put a band together. So there I was in Dublin. I'll tell you what I looked like when I went back to Dublin. It was like did you see that film In the Name of the Father? You know, with Daniel Day-Lewis.
You have indeed.
Yeah, you know, when he arrives back and he's got long hair and an Afghan furry coat. That's exactly what I look like as well. We all look like that. And we're walking around.
You needed a good bath and a haircut.
Exactly, yeah. That's the look we went for, yeah. So anyway, I remember walking past the record shop, and there was a piece of music playing that I liked. So I said, I'll go in and just listen to the piece of music. This is in Dublin now, in Liffey Street, just off of Henry Street.
Yep.
And I was in this record shop, flicking few records, and next thing, Steve was working there. He came round the counter, and he came up to me, and he says, "Do you want to be in the band?" Well, I said, "Yeah, of course." I said, "Of course I do." And that's where we first met. The problem was that I just didn't like Dublin at all. You know, I just didn't like. Not to say I didn't like it. I just felt. It just felt a bit backward to me, you know. So I went back to London and worked. When I was in London, I ended up, I got the Evening Standard, as I told about earlier, and I just saw a job for a record company looking for someone. So I said, "Oh, I'll give it a ring." This was a good learning curve as well for me. And I used to when I was later went into teaching, I used to use this where I rang up the number for this record company. I said, "I'd love this job." And when the person answered it, I said, "I'm ringing up about the job that you have in the Evening Standard." And the fella said, "Oh, I'm sorry, the job is gone." Now I had a choice then. I could have said, "Oh, fuck you," or something like that. Or, sorry. Or I could have said something like that. "Oh, well, thanks," and just put the phone down. But I just said, "Oh, that's a great shame." I said, "I think I would have done well. That type of position would have suited me." And I just kept giving him this. And he said, "Well, why don't you come in and have a chat?" So I went in, I had a chat, and he gave me the job. So there you go. You never give up.
Persistent.
Yeah,
Now, move forward. Just when you were talking about people that you've met, and I know you're not, but with you two in Croke Park, moving along, because your career alone, and we're going to play a couple of songs as we go along, but I want to know what inspired you and why you do what you do. And I know you've got your own studio, we'll bring you on, but what inspires you?
Well, as a kid, I think I went to a concert when we were living in Fulham. I went to a concert there. It wasn't actually really a concert. It was like a weekend event in a place called Olympia, which was like an exhibition hall, and it was a music-related event. I just went along. It was only I just went along for just to go, and then I just remember this is like similar to the Beatles moment where I was going around markets and having a look, stalls, I should say, and looking at this and looking at that. And then I began to notice people gravitating towards the concert area. So I said, I'll go in and just see who's on. Yeah. And when I went in, the next thing, John Peel, the famous English DJ, came out, and he said, "Please welcome on stage Tyrannosaurus Rex," which was Mark Bolan and Mickey Finn, who later, shortly after, became T-Rex. And I was just mesmerized by the whole thing. This little fella came on stage, and you literally just couldn't take your eyes off them. Do you know what I mean? And that's provided, I suppose, a bit of inspiration to me. You know, that this is something I'd like to at least give it a try. You know, so. But you know, things change. And when I went back to Ireland after working for the record company, I met up with Steve again, and that's when we decided to get a band together. Now, that was at a time where things were also changing as well. You know, where it changed from, I suppose, the glam rockers like David Bowie and Roxy Music and T-Rex that would have been my inspiration. There was this new, I suppose, protest music come along that got labeled sort of punk, you know, and the whole punk thing was really, I think, over the years, I think it's got a bit misrepresented in many ways, because punk music, for most of the people I know that were involved in it, was about change, you know, change and creating. You know, doing things for yourself. You know, making your own music, bringing your own music about, anti-corporation, etc., anti big government. You know, giving a voice to people that are in less fortunate than you, etc. So a lot of it was, you know, a lot of it was high energy. Not all of it. A lot of it was sort of high energy, sort of protest music, really. During that, again, economic decline. So we put a band together in Dublin, and it ended up being myself and Steve, who changed his name to Steve Rapid, and then we were joined then by some of the people might remember a fellow called Philip Chevron, who ended up many years later playing with Pogues amongst other things. So and then we had a drummer called Jimmy Crash and a bass player called Mark Magray. So we had like a 5-piece band. And because we were so different, when we went out to play in Dublin, it literally was like, you know, the band was called the Radiators from Space. It was literally like we had landed from another planet.
I was going to ask you there, Pete, is when I've been listening to your music, and I'm honored that we've had a few chats. Where did you come up with the Radiators from Space?
Well, see, Steve's the graphic designer, right? Steve is the graphic designer, and the Radiators from Space thing is symbolic. I'll tell you what it was, and it's quite easily explained. Is in the 1950s in particular, and maybe up to the 1960s, if you went to a cinema, there'd be the main feature, and then there would be what you call the B movie, you know, the little shorter film. So a lot of those B movies might be science fiction type films, like, you know, the killer tomatoes from outer space, etc., and all that. So that was really so what Steve did, Steve came up with a name. He said, well, the Radiators from Space, what it represents them is that if you've got like mainstream music, you know, being the main feature, you know, the big artists and the punk music was almost like the B movie, you know, the B movie of music, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's really that's how the name evolved, you know, the Radiators from Space, you know.
And so just moving on a little bit with that is you've like, you know, you've gone on to more stuff, and I'm curious, and even like with the band that is under Cleary's Clock, where did that come from?
Sure.
And we'll just play that after you tell us what it's about, where it came from.
Yeah, well, I think the band what happened to the band is that we got some patronage from Eamon Carr, who's the drummer of the Horselips, and a fellow called Jackie Hayden, and they paid for some demos for us, and then Eamon took the demos to London to a record label called Chiswick Records, and they had two Irish guys working for them. Ted Carroll, who owned it. Ted Carroll was famous for managing Thin Lizzy in their early career, and a fellow called Roger Armstrong, who was the ENTS officer in Queens previously. So, you know, so there was an Irish community in the music industry in London, you know, like Dave Robinson and Stiff Records, and Ted and Roger at Chiswick. Now, we used to we used to call them the Murphia as opposed to the Irish Murphia
The
as opposed to the
Murphy.
Mafia,
I like that one.
as opposed to the Mafia.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Steve, we recorded the demos. Steve did the logo, and we sent it off. And to cut a long story short, we end up then signing a record deal with Chiswick Records and releasing a few singles that did really well, and then the album, etc., and so on and so forth. And we end up then doing a tour with Thin Lizzy, the Irish band Thin Lizzy. We went on tour with them. That brought us, I suppose, to a bigger audience, not necessarily our audience, but a bigger audience. And at the end of that tour, this all leading up to the second album, which was we end up meeting and working on the second album with a very famous producer called Tony Visconti, who had produced our idols. He had produced Bowie, he had produced Mark Bolan, and now all of a sudden he was producing the Radiators from Space. So the second album we recorded is an album called Ghostown, and it has been described, not by us, I hasten to add, it has been described as being a very literate album that is almost like, it could well be like, it could be to Irish music was what Ulysses was to Irish literature. And they're mainly driven by Philip Chevron. But one of the songs that wasn't quite written in time to be on Ghostown was Under Cleary's Clock. And so what happened was it was reissued. I think there was a 10-year anniversary reissue of Ghostown. And we recorded this song Under Cleary's Clock. Actually, I'll tell you, I just remembered now. In 1987, the Radiators reformed to perform a benefit gig to support AIDS, the AIDS epidemic, right?
Yes.
And I suppose we were one of the first bands in Ireland to do it. And so we performed the song Under Cleary's Clock the first time at that concert. And then it was a few months later that the song was recorded. Now, the song itself is, to me, it's just a great love song, but for Philip, who was, a gay man, I remember actually Philip calling. Say, I need to tell you something. He said, and I said, he's not going to leave he's not. What's he done now? So I said. So we went into a quiet room. I said, Philip, what's up? He says, I'm gay. And I said, does that mean you're leaving the band? He said, no. So, all right, grand. Let's go. Let's carry on. That's what we worried about. So this song is about, for those listeners and viewers who don't know, on Dublin's O'Connell Street, which is the main thoroughfare, there's a famous clock outside the department store called Cleary's. It's called Cleary's Clock, and it's famous for being a meeting point for if you're going on a date or something like that. You say, "I'll meet you under Cleary's Clock." So, but the song is really Philip's expressing that what's wrong with him waiting for another man under Cleary's Clock. Do you know what I mean? And if you look at the lyrics, it's quite it's very, very poignant, and it's very rare that Philip would write a song that was so personal as well, personal to him, and making that sort of point,
And I was going to say is especially
he said, why can't I wait outside Cleary's Clock just like other lovers do without disgrace,
Well, I've got to, and I just said there with Philip, is also is back then in that time, that's nearly 17, 18 years ago, I said, you can correct me, when he wrote it.
Yeah.
And the song that's quite brave.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I really admire that. So let's just play this and we'll come on the other end of it.
bus to unroar is his for sure. 10 minutes more, I know will bring my love to me, the love that does not have a name. Long, lonely nights, just imagining his face. Only in dreams do I kiss him and embrace. Cold morning light, he is gone with only shame to take his place. Thunder clear his clock tonight at 8. I want to wait, oh God, he's late. He stood me up. The next bus to Unlaw is his for sure. 10 minutes more, I know will bring my love to me, the love that does not have a name. Thunder clear his clock tonight at 8. I want to wait, oh God, he's late. He stood me up. The next bus to Unlaw is his for sure. 10 minutes more, I know will bring my love to me, the love that does not have a name.
He was still sort of prone to attacks, and homophobic slurs, etc., and so on. So yeah, it was, people that maybe you did business with. If you, as they say, came out of the closet and were open about it, quite often, it could be an issue. You might lose work, or you might lose business, or you might lose friends, even. But it seems ridiculous now, But it was true in those days. So you're right. It was an enormously brave thing for him to do.
Yeah.
I remember, where we had gone our separate ways, and gone on to different things. And Philip called me once. He was living in Nottingham at the time, and he may or may not, I can't remember now if he was actually playing with the Pogues, or he might have been on a leave of absence with the Pogues because due to maybe a little bit of ill health. So he said, do you want to come over and for the weekend in Nottingham? Do you know what I mean? He lived in Nottingham, right by Trent Bridge, the cricket ground there. It was lovely. And so he said, there's a few lads who are coming over because Forest are playing at home. Now Philip, when he was in the Radiators, you couldn't even mention football or soccer because remember he used to say it's just grown men running around in shorts kicking a pig's bladder full of air. The way he described it. So, but when he was in the Pogue, suddenly I think the bass player Darryl converted him to, and he was like soccer mad at this stage. Philip Chevron now was soccer mad. But anyway, so we had a great weekend. We went to see a match and we had a meal, and then just in the evening we were listening to a few music pieces. And I just happened to notice on the fireplace there was a picture of a nice looking guy, a man. I just said to Philip, I said, who's the photograph there, Phil?
Yeah.
And he just looked and he said, that was the love of my life.
Oh wow!
And he had passed away. And you know what? It still does. It hit me really.
I can feel it.
I was really happy for him. Do you know what I mean? Because where you might have felt he was lonely, and he was a man, and he doesn't have a wife, and he doesn't have the kids, but he did get someone who became the love of his life, and which is I just think was.
It kind of makes it all worthwhile what he went through. Did find.
Yeah, what shouldn't he? What he was looking for, all any of us are looking for, is sometimes is to be happy. Like to be
correct.
Be happy in our
correct.
Life. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to be happy. It helps, but no. I'm sorry.
No, I know what you mean, but
it doesn't cost money to be nice and to be be pleasant to help other people if in need, if you think it's the right thing to do.
Well,
So
I think what you're saying is basically is that he should be happy. No one's going to judge him. Back then,
of course,
he found it very hard for him to find love because he was afraid to admit it. But then he found it, and that's wonderful.
But thankfully, like he's gone now, unfortunately. He was, thankfully, within his lifetime, things changed a lot, which is good.
Okay, now
we have other issues to deal with.
Pete, I want to move back onto your life, and oh yeah, there's my phone ringing. You're not allowed to do it on air. Yeah, you're supposed to switch it off. Pete, I want to go back to just what you're doing at the moment, and I've looked at a lot of things that you've done, and I really love your new single that we're going to play at the end. But I want to tell people what is Pete doing from here on? You have an amazing career. What does the man behind the musician, what do you want to see going forward as you're doing?
Okay. Well, strangely enough, you get to an age. I mean, I'm 71 now. I mean, and the fact that you realise that the clock is ticking. Do you know what I mean? And I have, you're gonna have to excuse the language on this one.
That's okay.
I'm determined to get these T-shirts made that says I don't have time to fuck about. Do you know what I mean? Because, in other words, I'm at an age now that
can you send me one of those?
I will do. Yeah,
I'll wear it on the next show.
I will do. But the point I'm making is that I'm at an age now that if I want to do something, I can't sit around thinking about doing it anymore. Do you know what I mean? I either do it or I don't do it. And one of the two, because I don't have time. If I want to do it, let's get going on it. So it's good. So I mean, going forward, I'm very happily married to Caroline. She's.
I was going to say, sweet Caroline. Did you sing the song?
Yeah, very sweet. Yeah.
Did you ever sing that song to her?
She's a rock now. She's great. I admire her immensely. We're great friends above anything else. Like the room I'm in now is actually detached from the house. This is the studio. I can show you a bit of there's the actual studio there.
Oh wow!
You can see all the gear in that, So it's like we built it from the ground up. So look, at the moment, this room is a real creative space because Caroline now has written books. You'll find her books. She wrote books with her friend under the name of Evie Hunter. You might see the posters on the wall behind me there.
Yeah, Evie, and so can you shout out where we can see her books or where we can go on to have a look?
I think they're all online. Yeah, they're all online, but they were released in most countries. So Evie Hunter, The Pleasures of Spring, I think was the first one. So that was quite successful. It's the erotic novels, apparently. Oh, I read a paragraph of one of them, and I was mortified.
Well, she obviously wasn't thinking about you when she wrote them. Yeah. But anyway, tell her to give me a ring.
But going forward, what I'm trying to say is that this is like a creative space. Yes. It's my studio, but it's not really a professional studio. It's not a commercial studio. I do the odd little paying job, but a lot of the time is I'll just bring people in. I say, look, I've got a couple of mics to check out. When you come in and record a couple of songs, I'll use my mics, and you can take the recordings away, etc. But I have recorded a lot of stuff for other people here as well. Going forward, I mean, I had the opportunity I'm playing with a band called Trouble Pilgrims that grew out of the Radiators. But one of the members of the Pilgrims has been quite ill. He's slowly on the mend, but we were in a position there where we couldn't really work or do anything. So I'm here. I can't really work with the band, and I have a studio. So I began to formulate the idea of recording a solo record, and which I did. And I decided to look at just write a bunch of 10 songs that would show the connection between my influences, which would be the glam rockers, and the music that I made myself, which was sort of high energy protest music, call it punk if you want, and merge them all together and get them to cross over on one record of 10 songs that's called Electric Jukebox. Now, I called it Electric Jukebox because that's what it's almost like. It's like a jukebox.
It's like a jukebox. You can pick the songs that you like,
exactly, yeah.
or that we like yours.
You could put it on random and it would still make sense, if you know what I mean. So going forward, what I plan to do is, hopefully we'll get back on the road with the Pilgrims at some stage. But what I'm working towards now is like Electric Jukebox live, like a live concert version. So I'm putting together a band. I'm putting together a band for that. So hopefully around about August. There's a possibility there's a festival here called the Electric Picnic that happens, and so if I can get it, the Electric Jukebox at the Electric Picnic, that would be just perfect.
Now I tell you what, that would plan to get you got to get that up in Sydney with the Electric Jukebox. Festivals they have there. Now listen, we're going to finish up. We're coming up to the end of the show, but I want to do two things. Is first of all, we'll play at the end of the show. And I want to know your new song that's coming out. Tell me a bit about that now.
Okay, well, that was one of the tracks from Electric
Hot
Jukebox.
Love on My TV Screen.
Yeah, Hot Love on My TV Screen. Well, the idea of the Hot Love is there was a famous song by T-Rex called Hot Love, And so it's just about Hot Love's on my TV screen, and it was a huge influence, Yeah. And the weird thing was, it's up on TikTok, and it's also up on YouTube. Tony St. Ledger from the Pilgrims, he came to this studio here and we recorded a video. Do you know what I mean? And he tarted it all up and it made it look amazing. And and I don't really use TikTok at all. I use it the odd time. Do you know what I mean? And the only time I've got a lot of views was I made a little video. I have an old Saab 900 car, right? And I've got I have a little box that. There's a thing that you can put near the dashboard that it holds cassettes, because I have a tape cassette machine in the car. Yeah. And I just did a little video of me pulling the thing out, getting out a cassette and putting it in. And that got 7,000 views. I went, what the hell? What about my music? Stop the Saab and what about my music? So we did this video and we put it up on TikTok. And it got 25,000 views.
Wow! Yeah.
And the stats show because when you get to my age, and when you get sort of older, one thing I was trying to avoid was being what you call a legacy band. You're going out and trading on all your old records. I'd rather be in their care home, to be honest, than do that. Right? So I remember I told you. When I got a guitar with my first few weeks' wages, and I was more interested in writing my own songs. That is still the case. Do you know what I mean? So I'm still interested in making new music, working with other people, working with different projects, and just being creative because I love it. I love this room. I love being in here. I love making music, and it's what keeps me young, Marty.
Pete, I can totally pick up what you're putting down. It's the same thing. I say I'm a businessman. I've done lots of stuff. It's doing these podcasts, everything. It's the best non-paying job I ever got.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a passion, the same as what you're doing. Now, we're going to finish up, and we're going to finish up on your new single. And then, as the audience knows, we have all your contacts and details on the description at the start of the show. But can I just say before we do that, I wish I had another 5 hours with you. But I would like to say to you, it's absolutely been a pleasure.
Well, we should keep in touch, Marty, all right?
Oh, you can't get rid of me now.
No. I was just saying we should keep in touch on WhatsApp or whatever. I mean,
we'll stay in touch.
Once a month. How's it going, Marty?
No, I'll give you a ring every week.
Okay, yeah, grand, yeah.
What I'm saying is,
tell him I'm busy.
Yeah, tell the missus. Hey, he's taking over. What I'm going to say is we're going to put everything on here and just that finishing off, if I can say, Pete, what, and especially in the music terms and the kind of person you are, what advice would you give to the younger generation that wants to go into music and has a passion, what advice would you like to give to them?
A couple of things. One, you have to remember the music business is a business. The music industry is an industry, and you can do it for fun. But if you want to sort of take it seriously, you have to sort of think about it. How can I survive? How can I survive? But at the same time, for me, it's about writing the best songs you can. It means writing the best songs you can and having fun doing it as well. Like with the record I've just released there, I just remember saying I just want to make this sound like a record that I would be running out to buy myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So make music that you love. Don't sort of pander to the market. Do you know what I mean? Don't make music just because you think this is what people want to hear. Just have fun doing it.
Well, I think that's the best advice. And Pete, as I said earlier, a pleasure. We'll stay in touch. Now, that's Pete Holidai, and you can look at the start of it. And I would like to thank you to our listeners. We're finishing off with Pete's newest one, Hot Love, on my TV screen. And to our listeners to Australia and all over the world, have a listen to that and follow up. And for this episode, good night and thank you very much. Pete, thank you, my friend.
Bye.
I'll talk to you soon.